Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Elite 11 team reveal in this never-ending Game Week 21, guys. It's finally drawing to a close. So we've got Mark Mansfield on the channel this week to preview Game Week 22. We're going to be talking longer-term strategy with the upcoming blanks and doubles to navigate as well. And of course, you can head over to fantasyfootballfix.com if you haven't already to get your push notifications enabled for all of our Elite Manager thoughts if you want to follow how they're progressing over the course of the season. But without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel. And Mark, welcome back, man. I think this is the first time we've spoken this year, so I think I can still just about get away with saying Happy New Year, mate. And we can see a beautiful upward trend on this graph. This is continuing a theme of elite managers all kicking ass for the 2024 season. So how is the season panning out for you, mate?
Hey Tom, how are you? Good to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the season's panning out quite well. Can't complain too much about the rank. It's around 160,000 after today's games.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to think five green arrows in a row.
Beautiful.
I'm on a red at the moment, but I think maybe Estepinian can come in and sort that out for me tomorrow.
I love it.
That'd be my main hope.
Look, I mean, it's great. I've had Corey on recently. I've had Craig on recently. I've got yourself on, and it's just... all of these elite managers have hit the turn of the new year, as they all told me they were going to do. They were going to get to Christmas with their overall rank intact and then kick on, and that's exactly what's happening. So we can see, as you say, in a nice position there with your overall rank. Tons of chips still in play. 7.9 million. Absolute fortune in the bank to work out how to get through these next few fixtures as well, Mark. So I'm excited to get your thoughts. This game week seems like it's never ending, right? It's a really weird one. We're recording on Sunday night. There's still another fixture that you've already mentioned as well, guys. So we are going to preview Game Week 22, but we're also now going to take a look at how Mark's Game Week 21 team is shaping up so far. Okay, look, Mark, my eyes are immediately drawn to that beautiful French kiss. Chef's kiss, sorry, Gabriel, 17-pointer, right? And at the back, and if I'd asked you or told you before that game that Gabriel was going to pick up 17 points, I'm sure you would have bitten my hand off. But there is a but. There's always a but with FPL, right? Saka captaincy. Let's talk around that Arsenal game. What are your feelings around that? The points hauls that you picked up in that Arsenal game, mate?
Yeah. I mean, crazy what happened with Gabriel. The situation with the Arsenal defence is that you don't really care whether they clean or not. And it can be better sometimes if they actually lose the clean sheet, the amount of people that have two assets. But for a defender to score 2 goals, and he did score 2 goals, is really unusual. I remember Chris Smalling doing it off the bench maybe about 5 years ago in a midweek round. The real disappointment is Saka there. Seemed to be a bit weirdness out there about the captaincy selection this week, like as if there was some conspiracy around the selection of Saka. But I was quite happy with it. I was looking at statistics over the previous 6 game weeks, and he much like his team statistics, he hadn't returned, but the underlyings were there. And Arsenal came in big time, and Saka didn't. And that's there's 2 sides to this. Like, he didn't look like he was going to return really. He's really peripheral. He seems to be, I think it's systematic. He's asked to be an outlet and recycle it. But the weird thing about him being an outlet is when they have a counter attack, he's nowhere to be seen. So frustrating to have the Saka captaincy. Weird. I thought the militancy and the tribalism around it and the analysis afterwards, I think we could do it a little bit more live and let live, let people make their decisions without lambasting them on 50-50 ones.
Yeah.
But I don't regret it at all. I would do it again. Mm-hmm. But there are other things about my team that are annoying me quite a lot, which I think we'll get into.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it's all right. It's a good team, I was forced into a -4 because I picked up the Taylor and Trent injuries. Salah and Son went off, and Lascelles kind of is out of favour, as we knew would happen. So in order to get 11 out, I took a -4, brought in Foden and Estepinian. And really looking at that team sheet, what I'm more annoyed about is that I brought in Foden over another option that I had strongly considered. I had strongly considered Jota. I could see what was going on at Liverpool, and I chickened out of it really. I started thinking about minutes expectations, and then I kind of read the game wrong. I thought Bournemouth might be better than they were today, and Bournemouth were poor today. You know, Liverpool controlled it, and yeah, Liverpool were good, but Bournemouth were just off it.
Yeah.
And I'm really disappointed in myself that I didn't bring in Jota, because I've been talking to someone. I was saying it's a really nice opportunity for a big differential, and like I bottled it really. So kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I get the disappointment, of course, Mark. And it's interesting. We did talk in dispatches about Jota on the last of these videos. Actually, we spoke, myself and Corey have spoken about it. Myself and Craig mentioned his name, and he's just when he's on the pitch, right? And historically, he does return points, and it was an opportunity, wasn't it? Can I just ask you around that kind of few big topics you've mentioned there, Mark, around the kind of militancy and berating where decisions are made, etc., and what have you, but also that kind of strategic where you see there's an opportunity and perhaps it's going a little bit against the grain in terms of the, you know, the FPL parlance and what have you. Historically, what do you kind of do? Are you a manager who says, you know, forget that, I'm managing this my own way, and if I've got a read on it, I go with it, or do you still sort of favour the group think a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's kind of really difficult now for people to say they have any particular philosophy on captaincy, because we've been spoon-fed it to such a degree over the last 18 months that I think people have forgotten how to pick a captain. And I think they've forgotten that, you know, captaincy can be split, and this idea of the best captain a priori is just entirely flawed. There were at least 4 good captains this week, and I think it's a bit weird, the discourse around it on captaincy. In the lead up to it, people seem to try to convince others that they should pick this captain or that captain, which that's the opposite of what you should be doing. If you think someone's the best captain, you should be keeping it quiet, not trying to convince people, unless you're one of the Elite 11 where you kind of have to flag it early.
When you share the wealth, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But I think afterwards, yesterday, I was seeing all this kind of really weird kind of triumphalism from people because their player, you know, who wasn't very involved, got a penalty. And I was listening to a pod during the week, and they were kind of suggesting that there was some conspiracy of elite players and content creators to go for Saka, and it's just really weird to me that people think like that. It's like, yeah, I think back in the day, I think I would have been more of a vibes manager, coming to picking captaincy, how I feel about things. But that said, like, this captaincy decision was based on 2 players who had very equal underlyings, and I went with the fixture. And I think, like, there's a harsh punishment in there because the reading of the fixtures was correct.
It was,
and it was just, you know, it's what can happen, and it's only 7 points. It doesn't matter too much. But I think people might be a little bit more. I think they might be more charitable in their outlook towards other people's decisions generally.
Let's champion that on this video, guys. We'll champion that approach, because I think, like, you're absolutely right there. The good decisions should be celebrated as well, and people should have the fun when they take their hauls. But I'm not here for the critique that you just referred to. Let's move on and talk about a couple of these other point haulers there. So we've got a couple of Tottenham players in the team here. Pedro Porro, been a name that's been on in many videos in relation to the Spurs backline, and Richarlison as well. Let's talk about Richarlison to start with, Mark. It's been a great FPL option for a little while there. You sort of confident that you're going to be maintaining and holding Richarlison for a pretty long stretch now, even as and when Son comes back into the team? Are you comfortable that he'll be part of your midfield contingent?
I was an early adopter of Richarlison. I got him in for Gordon for a hit, I think 5 weeks ago or 4, and he's got 3 8-point returns and a 1-point return.
Lovely.
So really happy with that, and that's why I'm annoyed at myself at the moment. That harks back to a few weeks ago in the season, 2 months ago. I was kind of making the braver choice, whereas the last 2 weeks I've kind of I think I've got influence and taken the easy road. So that's something I want to reverse in the next few weeks.
Okay.
In terms of your question, which I, you know, like a politician, I said something else first. In terms of your question, no, I'm not confident he'll stay around, and it's not really got to do with Son, you know, being a better option per se. I think it's more that Maddison is going to be the one I prefer to have out of all of them.
Yeah.
Earlier, I got on Madison very early in the season. I think, anyone who, I think from every perspective, no matter how you play FPL, like Madison was a valid pick. If you watch games and pick a player, Madison. If you look at stats, Madison. If you look at the returns that are coming in and just pick on the highest scorer, Madison. So at his value, I think that's where I'll be going if I come off Richarlison.
Yeah.
In terms of Paro, I was on Paro. I bought him, and I sold him for kind of tactical reasons or strategic reasons. I needed to raise some money, and I really didn't want to, and I got him back pretty quick. Yeah. But I just love owning him. He's just watching a game with Paro is just the ultimate FPL experience. And he's just everywhere, doing everything.
It's a flip as well, Mark, right? Not owning him and watching games is horrific to go through that. And it's sort of comparable to not owning Trent Alexander-Arnold in years gone by. I sort of make the same comparison. It's not a nice experience. So, I totally get on board with that. Let's talk about this front line, Mark. You've got the front three. You've gone back. Everyone eventually comes back to 3-4-3 in FPL. We mess around at the beginning of the season, but come January, it's time to get to 3-4-3, isn't it? But
absolutely, it's the connoisseur's choice.
It really is, isn't it? We can hipster it up prior to January, but once it comes to this part, it's 3-4-3, isn't it? Alvarez, Ollie Watkins, and Solanke, right? A grand total of 5 points between them. But they've been the form strikers, right, for a long period. I guess Alvarez, maybe you could argue the point there. What are you thinking longer term here, Mark, around the setup of the front three in FPL, and I guess in relation to the three that you've selected, how are you feeling about them ongoing?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, when the three of them have combined got 5 points, I'm not feeling too good about them in the moment.
In the moment, yeah.
I mean, to go through them one by one, Alvarez, I sold Darwin for him 2 weeks ago, and again, it's one of those ones where I'm disappointed in myself. I got on Darwin in game week 8 wildcard, and I'd held on to him all that time, and then I think I got swayed by just this whole Alvarez hype in the run up to the Sheffield United game, and I saw double figures has to happen, and I got him. I didn't need to, so I'm not feeling too good about him now. But the idea was, as long as Haaland's out, he's good, and I've got the money in the bank. So I think that's what a lot of people were thinking. And who knows what's going on with Haaland now, right? I don't.
No, me. No, we don't know.
No. It's a mystery. So I'll hold on to him as long as Haaland's out.
And with an upcoming double as well, right? I need to think about that.
Yeah, completely. That was on my mind, definitely. So it's one of those ones where Darwin's just scored 2, and I'm feeling a little bit tender.
Sure.
Yeah,
what about Ollie Watkins?
Justifiable.
Let's move on to Ollie Watkins. What's your read on him and Aston Villa right now?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough to watch. It's tough to see on your team sheet. He hasn't got penalties. He's worth a little bit more than the other guys. And I don't think it's going to take much for the levy to break on Watkins. Yeah. You've got, Tony's emerged. He looks like one people are going to go for. And all of a sudden, there's a few options in that price bracket. They've got penalties. I think depending on how Gameweek 29 shakes out, we might see an exodus on Watkins.
Yeah.
It doesn't like all these good players, it doesn't feel great not owning them. And then when they don't return, it doesn't feel great owning them.
Yeah, and he's been a curious player, right, this season. I mean, he had that absolutely monumental haul what feels like a long time ago, right? But other than that, it has been a kind of drip feed of steady points at over 8 million, hasn't it? So, yeah, I guess it becomes more difficult to countenance, doesn't it, when you've got other viable options, of which there are. You've mentioned a couple already in terms of Darwin, Nunez and Ivan Toney as well to consider.
Yeah, I think the equation that was in a lot of people's heads was they had to get Haaland in, and they're going to raise money from somewhere. Yeah. And like Watkins is always just sitting in the corner of the room, no one's going to touch him. Yeah. But I think now, now it's looking like maybe Watkins can go for Haaland. Yeah. But another point on Haaland, I think, is I'd say Villa have been performing to their max so far, and good luck to them if they can keep that up for the rest of the season, but maybe not. So, I think of the two we've mentioned so far, either can go at any time. Yeah. And then on Solanke,
let's move on.
Yeah, we know there's a double coming sometime. He doesn't need to go, especially when you're running a strong front eight. He doesn't need to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's pretty safe for a lot of people. Not good today, but that's fine. That's Liverpool. That's going to happen. So he's probably the safest for me.
I was being a little bit glib before about the 3-4-3, Mark, but we've talked a lot throughout this series this season about the wealth of options in midfield. You mentioned James Maddison coming back into the mix. Son and Salah will re-emerge at some point, won't they? Probably not that far away.
Yeah.
Of course, Kevin De Bruyne is now fit and somewhat healthy, and very definitely in the FPL conversation as well. Could you see a situation where you rip the money out of the forward line, rock in with one or two, and then start playing five in midfield as the default again anytime soon?
Yeah, I could see that happening very easily. We're in a slightly unprecedented situation as far as my memory is concerned, insofar as I've 8 million in the bank and I've got a 13 million pound player on the bench. So, the
something's
current
not right about this, is there? Yeah.
It's off. And Big Kev has come back. We all love him. Everyone loves Kev.
Oh yeah.
FPL, normal people, everyone loves him, and with good reason. And he's 10.5, 10.6.
That's a lot of money.
Kind of seems silly. Yeah, seems silly not to have him. So I can see a future where, you get rid of Watkins for Haaland. Then you downgrade someone else to maybe Jimenez at Fulham. Someone who's
Chris Wood, someone like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have a big five in the middle.
Yeah.
Madison, KDB, any of the guys on the screen there.
Yeah.
But there's going to be some pretty seismic ownership shifts, I think, around Saka and Watkins over the next 2 weeks or so.
There definitely will be, right? And on that, just take it back to Saka then. Right now, obviously the captaincy, and what happened with him with the goal and what have you, is put that aside, put that pin in that specific occurrence. Mark, what's your read on Saka as an FPL hold, right, for the foreseeable future? I mean, it's a difficult one for me to phrase the question correctly, because he has been so good for so long, not just this season, but it feels to me it's getting harder to justify. Am I off with that assessment?
No, I'd agree with you on that. I think there's an element, he's an FPL darling, and he gets away with a lot in our minds because we remember.
Yeah.
And the worry for me is it's not so much the underlying stats, it's just when I look at them and his part in the system.
Yeah.
But even yesterday, easily gets some returns and it's fine. I think the reason he's highly owned is because he's always fit.
Yeah.
And for the last, I think, 2 months, there's always been something more pressing for people. You couldn't sell him last week.
No.
Would I buy him now? Absolutely not. Would I buy him last week? No, I don't see why you would.
No.
But would you sell him? There's always more to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird situation, isn't it, where they get a continued stay of execution. All right, Mark, that sort of wraps things up there. Obviously, wish you well with the Stupinian tomorrow night when they face off in the final game week of the game week that keeps on giving, in game week 21. But we're going to take a look now at how your bus team is set up for game week 22 and get your early thoughts around what transfers you could be making. Okay, so this is how we're set up. So Gabriel's got this yellow flag already. We'll wait and see what happens with that one. But the eyes for me are drawn to that captaincy, Mark, on Richarlison here. Is that something that you've picked out based on a particular read of how him or Spurs are doing, or did you not like something in the Brentford defensive line, or is it just actually you think that there's not a lot else in terms of standout options? What's the thought around the captaincy for game week 22 from your team's perspective?
It's probably the selection of a disillusioned captainer. What I've noticed, if I review the conversations and the chats that I have privately with people, or maybe even some of the tweets I put out about my bus teams, they always seem to be right. But I get to the end of the week and I find Palmer's on the bench with an 18-pointer. And I found a few times I've got my initial captaincy thing has been right. And then I get involved in overthinking it. I start listening to pods, blah, 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 and I end up on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So, it's what I just need to snap out of it, as I've been mentioning throughout this video.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I have the players. I think my squad selection has been good, but I think my management of bench and captaincy has been poor. And I think if that was corrected, I genuinely think I'd be up around 30,000 now.
Yeah.
So it's really top of my mind now to stop making these silly moves. And I don't include the sack of captaincy in that. I mean,
that wasn't a silly
bench
move.
and Palmer,
No.
things like that.
Yeah, I get it. Do you know what? You may not recollect this, Mark, but I do. You've told me that on a previous video as well, as to that initial thought that's crystallized in your mind often actually proves to be correct, and then actually the progression of your thoughts throughout the course of typically a week, and in game week 21 it feels like forever. Actually, that's where the danger, and that's where your kind of jeopardy is actually as a manager.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a vice of FPL being a hobby, because like you set up on a Sunday and you go, okay, this is what I think is best. And then over the course of the week, like I go out for a couple of walks every day, I listen to pods. Like, so consuming the content, looking at stats, overthinking it is, a hobby to take your mind off stuff.
Yeah.
But the process of doing that makes you maybe think the wrong thing. And I think I need to start what I used to do earlier in the season. I'd start the week with a really clear idea on what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And my philosophy was like, I need to find something to prove this wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas I think over Christmas, maybe I had too much of a good time. Maybe my mind wasn't always the most stable.
Yeah.
And I was just getting convinced and taking the easy path, and if I can correct that, I think I can do well. Yeah. But I need to fix a few little kinks in what I'm doing at the moment.
Next time you're on, I'm going to remind you of this, Mark, and see whether or not we get three for three, and if you're telling me the same thing as well. And of course, guys, we do not consider fantasyfootballfix.com stats to be in any way part of the reason that could cause confusion. They offer clarity of thought and of clear thinking is what you should expect from that. Of course.
No. It's a boggled brain is the problem.
Yeah. All right. Look, let's look at this. So you've got you've got an absolute fortune in the bank here, Mark. 7.9 million. You've still got Mo Salah sitting on the bench there gathering dust as well. One free transfer, a question mark over Erling Haaland, a Kevin De Bruyne shaped problem as well. What are you thinking with this one free transfer? Where's your thoughts in terms of potentially using free transfer ahead of game week 22, or are you looking to roll and accrue the two?
Yeah, I'm in a pretty bad place with respect to this, because I think clearly I do need to make a move in defence at some point. The Taylor Lascelles issue isn't going to resolve itself. However, who do I find who's better than the three that are there? It's difficult. So do I roll and just hope that my 11 guys show up? Yeah, probably. Do I go for De Bruyne, which I think a lot of people will do, and take out one of these four guys? That could be a little bit silly, especially given you would hope, not forgetting what happened in Newcastle against Manchester City, you would hope that when Foden and Alvarez on the pitch, they'll get a significant proportion of the attacking returns. And if KDB does well by association, these two guys do well if they're on the pitch.
Agreed. Yeah.
So what am I going to do? Am I going to bring in KDB for Foden? I don't think so.
No.
Am I going to bring him in for Palmer? No. Richarlison? No. Saka? It's just mischief. It feels like, not forgetting what we just said about Saka, it just feels like you don't need to do this.
Yeah.
So I think the wise thing is stick, isn't it? Roll.
Yeah, I mean, to me, team looks great already, as is. I guess if we learn that Gabriel is unfit and ruled out for a period of time, let's play a hypothetical here, Mark. If that's the case, and actually he's no longer, let's say he's ruled out at game week 22, and you've got no playing defenders, or likely no playing defenders coming off the bench. What's the move there?
I think you pay attention to the fact that maybe Chelsea and Spurs is off in 26, and at the very worst get someone who's a good player there, and if Gabriel doesn't make it, he comes in. You pay attention to 29, and but it's very hard for me to say anything without knowing what happens in the cup.
Yeah.
I do think, like, for people who love punting, Sergio Reguilon is there. Thomas Frank has said positive things about him. He got his first outing yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's a bad double is the only thing. It's a Liverpool City double. Do you want to get involved in that? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
And depending on what happens with Salah, maybe you just go straight back to Trent.
Yeah.
I can go straight back to Trent from Lascelles. I know I'm rambling here, but another opportunity could arise with Kieran Trippier and his rumoured move to Bayern. Maybe Livramento at 4.4 is just a straight swap for Lascelles. So, and it's just wait and watch.
It is, yeah. I mean, that's a lovely shout, actually. We'll watch the Kieran Trippier story play out, of course, with the Bayern links rumbling on as well. That is a nice little run, isn't it, for Newcastle? They've had a tough period there, and Eddie Howe finds himself under a fair amount of pressure, doesn't he, with where they are in the league and what have you, and out of European football as well. But I know they've got the Villa game, which isn't one that you particularly describe as fantastic, but it is a nice little run for them. So that's an interesting pick as well, in terms of potentially Livramento being a make weight there. That could be cool. Look, we want to move on, Mark. We've got some thoughts now ahead of the forthcoming game weeks, guys. So some information now is getting more clear around how game weeks, the next several game weeks play out in terms of the blanks and doubles, which is of course what we as FPL managers like to try and navigate. So let's take a look at how these game weeks are shaping up with what we know so far. Okay, guys, so we've decided to look a little bit further ahead. So game week 22, which is the next one that we're kind of previewing already, is quote unquote normal as anything is in this season. And then we kind of move on and on through game week 23 through game week 24. And then we start to get into this situation, which we love, right, Mark? In terms of FPL, we like to try and get an edge on our competition through the blanks and the doubles, right? And it's about to hit that period. From your perspective, is it a bit too early to be concrete in your plans, or have you got some thoughts around how you're likely to navigate this period that you'd like to share already?
Yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't look any further than 29 at the moment.
Sure.
And my first constraint around that would be I will not wildcard before that. So I won't even think about wildcarding now. All I would say is I will not wildcard before 29.
Like it. That's an important thing to call out already, because people will be super tempted potentially already, and it feels premature, right? A lot of teams are still very, very good. They may have had a tough run, but teams still feel to me to be in the main set up well.
Yeah, I think, getting around 29 is probably where you really want to do your work. I guess it's going to be a popular move to either free hit or dead end into 29 and wildcard out. But you can't really decide until you see how rounds 4 and 5 in the FA Cup go. Yeah. So right now, my main thoughts are how to navigate 25 and 26. Yeah. 25, I think, as you can see from my bus team there, my last two transfers in the last 2 weeks have been thinking about this to a degree. Getting Foden and Alvarez in, and that represents a commitment to them. One thing that I'd have about getting KDB in is if Haaland comes back at any time, obviously you want him in. So that situation needs to resolve itself soon enough. We can't keep going around with 8 million in the bank. No. I've got Salah still. Again, like unknown. This is all so strange. We're all in this holding pattern.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's I've never seen it before.
I think Jota is going to be popular.
Yeah, of course.
How Jota and Salah coexist, we don't know. So, obviously everyone's happy with Salah or Jota now getting 19 points. Let's all get him, yay! But when Salah comes back, what happens? I don't know.
No. It's really difficult because, I mean, historically, it's hard to, with the Klopp setup for the traditional front three back when, Sadio Mane and Firmino and Salah operated as that, trio, it's quite straightforward. But now with Nunez there, with Diaz still part of the mix, and Gakpo and Jota and Salah still very much part of it. It feels much more fluid and much more difficult to know how these minutes are going to be apportioned, right? I know I'm contradicting myself a bit, because when Jota's on the pitch, he gets points, but it does feel a little bit more challenging with Jota, even in spite of a massive haul against Bournemouth.
Absolutely. One of the things I mentioned, the minutes risk that I kind of perceived with Jota, which turned out not to be true, is that Klopp tends to be quite cutthroat with his attacking players within a game. So it wouldn't be a surprise if things hadn't been going well today and Jota came off in 55.
Yeah.
That was the kind of thing I had in my mind more than the security of his start. So I think the City puzzle is quite straightforward to solve for people. You pick 3 from 4 of the attackers. Defense is probably not where you want to be.
Stay away, man. Yeah, no one wants part of that. It's been too agonising for too long.
Yeah. But Liverpool is a much harder puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of committed to keeping Salah, because I'm not going to get him out and get him back in for 25.
Sure.
And I've kind of committed to not having Trent. So there mightn't be space for Darwin. So and I've said what I've said about Jota.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And this is probably the best reason to roll a transfer, just to see how you're going to deal with 25 in the forthcoming weeks.
Which feels like how you're arriving, right? So if we get positive news on Gabriel, based on what you've described in this video, Mark, it feels like a hold makes all kinds of sense, right? If you wanted to crystallise your thoughts ahead of Gameweek 22 and you want to revisit this in a few days' time, from what I've heard and what you've described to our viewers today, that feels like the right play.
Yeah, but we're in such a period now. It's weird. There was such a long lead up to the last deadline, an even longer one to the next one, and you just have no agency. You just can't impact what's going on at all unless you make early transfers, and they can go right or wrong. So I'm just going to observe for the minute. I've mentioned a few options in defence. There's lots of options everywhere, so you don't need to commit.
Beautiful. I love it. Lots of options everywhere. That's a good strap line for this video. We talked off camera, Mark, before we wrap things up in a few moments here. You wanted to talk around kind of early transfers and your feeling as to whether or not that kind of strategically what that means, and what your kind of advice is for FPL managers who are considering that. What do you want to get off your chest, mate?
Yeah, it's a little bit like what I said earlier about captaincy. There's a case to be made for early transfers, a very strong one, and there's a very strong case to be made against not taking early transfers. And like, if you want to make early transfers and buy Jarrett Bowen or whatever early in the week, that's perfectly fine. It may not be the wisest, but there are upsides to it as well. You get value, you get in ahead of people, this kind of thing. And that value, like it over the course of a season, it really builds up. But like, again, like with the captaincy this week, just see all these people castigating other people for playing the game they want to play it, and it's like it's got nothing to do with me, this one, so I don't really like have any skin in it. But I just feel a bit uneasy about this whole telling people the right way to play the game. I think I've mentioned to Matt Whelan, who does our blogs, before, like, I tend to just do whatever will get points, rather than having any strict strategies or anything like that. And I really think people, before they go out there to tell someone off with their schoolmaster's hat on, maybe they should just, let other people do their thing a bit more. I did have a bit of a Barney at you about that beforehand, Tom. All right, you're right to bring it up.
I wouldn't even say it was a Barney. I think it's really important, right? And there is no right way to play, right? And as far as I'm concerned, and listening to the likes of yourself, and previously I've had Corbs and Corey and Craig, and Tim's been on, and it's been all these great guys. Yes, there's a commonality with how your kind of thought processes tend to align in lots of cases. There's no way that every conversation is identical. Like, it's that's what keeps us coming back. I mean, if for people who are at all interested in my season, I've made some unbelievably weird calls this season because they've been good fun, and like this season they've worked out. Last season they sucked, but I think it's I think how you play the game is I want to encourage people to use our website, of course, and take the stats from that, because that's what we're here to do. But how people choose to play the game in terms of their transfer, there's always upsides to people's thoughts, and we should encourage that, I think, as a community, for sure.
just to vouch for Tom there, that is true because he's been rocking Cunha,
Yeah,
and he's a Dougie Louise OG as well. Just
that's
Tom
right.
has been kicking all the elite managers around in the league.
Rasmus
He's
Haaland,
crushing us all.
Rasmus Haaland is this game week's hero for me. I mean, he had, I think I saw that he's had 20 shots so far this season or something like that. Like it's a horrible selection in many ways. But you know what? I saw his reaction to him scoring his first goal in the Premier League and thought, I think he's going to carry on and be confident off the back of that. He then got poorly, didn't play, and I got Cole Palmer's points off the bench. Like,
yeah, I was going to see where you're going to bring that one up.
It's spectacularly lucky, and I'm here for it because there's been a million cases, well, maybe not a million, but many over the course of 15 years of playing the game, where the right decision has worked out horribly. So, we take the wins and we smile about them, and when it doesn't work out, there'll always be another game week. So, live and let live, right?
And I'll tell you what, FPL Review doesn't notice that happy little face on Rasmus when he scored his goal, but you did.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
There's an intangible as well, and we're working on the intangible as part of the fantasyfootballfix.com algorithm. We'll try and work in the breadth of smile. We'll see whether or not we can factor that into the captaincy algorithm. Been an absolute pleasure, man. Really enjoyed talking to you, Mark, for the first time this season. It's first time this year, I should say, and it's great to see you, continuing your long history of success. Anything you wanted to get off your chest before we wrap things up, or have we covered everything?
No, I've had a good old grumble today. I'm not feeling 100%, a bit of a virus, so it was bound to happen. Maybe I'll be a little bit happier when Estepinian bangs in an 18-pointer tomorrow.
God willing. I'm with you, as I'm an owner as well, so we'll see how that one works out as well, Mark. But look, it's been great to talk to you. Guys, do please smash a like on the video if you've enjoyed our conversation, and of course head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and subscribe to our channel as well. We're looking to get to 40,000 subscribers as quick as we possibly can. And look, sooner or later, we'll stop talking about Game Week 21 and we can look forward to Game Week 22 and beyond. Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thanks ever so much for joining us, and I'll talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.